first of all, how do you go from two-time state champion and four-time, in your high school undefeated? How do you go from that to wanting to do politics?
Well, I was at a point. I was assistant coach at Ohio State, and so I was at a point where I did that for 8 years, and at some point, it's kind of time to go try to be a head coach in Big Ten or do something else. And I was looking for something new to compete at. I mean, we were just talking about how you love competition, and same here. And frankly, when you know how it is, you get married, you have kids, you suddenly start looking at the world different. You get tired of government taking your money and telling you what to do and insulting your values. And so I decided to run. The state rep, the local in our General Assembly in Ohio, the state rep had announced he was going to retire. And I'd never been in politics, never run for anything. I was 29-year-old, Joe Bag of Donuts, never been in politics. And I think, I'm going to run for state rep. And I still remember going and talking to the heads of the party, because where I'm from, it's all about winning the Republican primary. So I still remember going and talking to the folks and saying, I'm thinking about running for state rep. And they basically said, well, you're a nice young guy, because I was young back then. They said, you're a nice young guy, but this two-term county commissioner is running, and, he's the favorite, and yada, yada. And I politely said, they basically said, you can't win. And I politely said, we'll see, right? That's why they kicked the ball off on Friday night. You got to play the game to see who's going to win. And we had a bunch of good people help us out, knocking on doors. I mean, we were knocking doors every weekend, and we wound up winning 70-30, which, in politics is a complete smack. It was just like so I've been in politics ever since. 30 years, 1994.
30 years in it. Yeah. Still love it as much as you did day one?
I do like, I like it when, the part I like the best is when I think there's a guy on the witness stand who I get the opportunity to cross-examine in one of these hearings, if I think that guy hasn't been square with the people, particularly the people I represent in the 4th District of Ohio, but frankly, the American people. And it's my job to highlight that and demonstrate that and try to improve how the bureaucracy is going to operate for how the government's going to operate for the American people. So I like the competition part of it.
I see some of this stuff, like weaponization of the federal government. You've gone against FBI, CDC, DOJ, all these guys, Hunter Biden, the handling of the classified documents, Fauci, ESG, all of these things you've gone up against. It seems like that's what drives you when you see some of the correcting the injustice that's taking place. That's when you get fired up and you want to compete and get in there. And again, it's entertaining to watch, because some of this stuff with politics, you need fighters. I was thinking you were going to be the Speaker of the House. Kevin and I have spoken multiple times.
Yeah,
we had him on.
I like Kevin.
I enjoy talking to Kevin, and I know you guys are friends.
Yeah.
But I thought for a moment, I'm like, you know what? Is he? And I think there was a moment for about a week or two where you were the one in the talks that could be the Speaker of the House, and then it went a different direction, and then Johnson, and then obviously it never happened. But how close was it to you being a Speaker?
Well, I got the nomination after with Kevin. We had the 8 guys who got rid of Kevin, which was a mistake, and then we had the ballots, and I ultimately get nominated. But there was a handful of guys that just weren't going to vote for me. And after 3 rounds, remember Kevin went 15.
I remember that.
And
crazy.
I remember I nominated in the 2nd round. But after 3 rounds, I just saw that it wasn't going to happen. So I went to the conference and basically said, okay, we can have a secret ballot vote. Do you still want me as your nominee, or do you want to move on? Because I didn't feel like it was appropriate to keep making my colleagues do it on. But there were a handful of folks who just, I think most of them kind of dealt with the Appropriations Committee, but there was a handful who didn't want to do it. But look, right now we're focused on, we got 7 days to win this thing. And I think we can win all 3. I think President Trump's going to win. I do feel like we're going to win the Senate. I think Marino's going to win in Ohio. We've been campaigning with him. I like McCormick in Pennsylvania. We've done a lot of. He's an old wrestling guy. He was captain at West Point. In fact, he called me up. Ratcliffe called me. John, who was a colleague of mine that worked for President Trump, called me like a year and a half, 2 years ago, and said, "Hey, McCormick would like to talk to you." I said, "Well, fine. I'm happy to talk to him." And so he calls me up. We start talking, and he says, "Hey, I wrestled. I was state champ Pennsylvania and was captain of the team at West Point." I'm like, well, why didn't you tell me that? I said, I'd have been for you last time if I'd have known that. He's a great guy.
That's cool.
I think he's going to win. So I think we're going to win the Senate. I think we're going to keep the House. So
now it's going to be interesting to see if this is like how in 2022 they said, well, there's going to be a red wave all this, and then boom, everybody was shocked. Oh shit, there is no red wave. So I'm curious to know what's going to happen, whether it'll happen this time or not. But I'm going to tell you a funny story. Then I got a bunch of things I want to go into with you. I'm in the Army.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm 6'4". At the time, I'm 6'4", 6'4.5", and 225 pounds.
Yeah.
And 7-8% body fat.
Yeah, you're ripped. Yeah.
I am ripped. I look good. Rob, pull up a picture. I can brag about what I used to look like at 18. And I feel good. Like if I'm fighting, if I'm wrestling, if I'm doing what I'm doing, I'm feeling good about myself, okay? That's the one right there. If you go to the second picture, Rob, the one that's me in the arm. That's actually in the barracks.
Dang.
That's me 19 years old in the barracks, okay?
Yeah.
And
you should have wrestled.
Well, let me tell you what happened. I didn't wrestle. So we're in boot camp, and we got 100 kids around, and everybody's coming in. We're fighting each other. And then this one kid comes to me. He's probably 5'6", 5'7", but I'm going to say 130 pounds. And he says, look, let me try. This is me, by the way. He says, let me try you. And I said, you want to try me? I said, look, I don't want to hurt you, honestly. This is not fair to you. Yeah. That's me 14 on the left. That's me 19 in the right.
Yeah. Look at that.
So we start. I said, I don't want to do this to you. There's people here I don't want to embarrass. He said, no, don't worry about embarrassment. I've got a thick skin. I'm like, I'm telling you, I don't want to do it. He said, just give me a shot. Jim, I'm not even kidding.
I know what you're going to say.
6 seconds, I'm begging him to stop. And he does it with a smile on his face.
Yeah, that's
so I'm like, dude, what is stop? And I'm like, what's the matter with you? He says, well, listen, I'm pretty good at it. I says, why are you so good? He says, I was a state champion in Florida or Ohio, one of these sets. He should have told me something like that. You were enjoying yourself too much. I wanted to surprise you. But that's the thing with wrestlers sometimes, because you can never tell. And then all of a sudden you're like,
Unless they got the ear.
Unless they got the ear, which is, when you see the ear, it's a good signal to say, how are you, sir?
Yeah.
Maybe, the approach changes a little bit.
I wouldn't mess with you when you're built like that. But it's funny because we were a couple years ago, and I was campaigning, helping a colleague in New Mexico. We're in El Paso, time change, late at night. And Polly's sleeping, I'm up, I can't sleep, and I'm clicking through ESPN, I'm on there, and they're doing how Dana does the preview of the big fight coming up. It's like the week before, and so they're previewing how they train.
Sure.
And it was Khabib's protege, I forget the guy's name, he's the tough, in same weight class as Khabib.
Khamzat or?
Ishmael, something like that, I forget. Anyway, they're showing him training, and then they're showing the guy from Brazil. So this is a couple years ago, and it's the big fight. And they show how they train and all. And it was funny because I'm watching it, and it's like the Brazilians is that's a different kind of...
Is he the stocky, shorter guy?
The Khabib guy is, the guy from Dagestan, who Khabib was training. And then the guy from Brazil was the longer, lankier Brazilian style, and they showed him training. But it was funny because the guys from the Dagestan group, they start with the wrestling base, and it showed them in the room training. I was like, that's exactly how our boys were training with my brother, and they're shooting across the mat and different things. And I just watched the whole thing, and I thought, and I said, I think the wrestling guy, the guy started with the wrestling base, the Khabib guy is going to win. Sure enough, the next week he beat him. I didn't get to see the fight, but it was funny because I said, who won that fight? And my boys were telling me, so. There's something with that wrestling background.
It's a different thing with the wrestling side, right? It's a different skill set. But you're going to think I'm crazy when I tell you this, but the last 13 and a half years, I've been working on my first fiction book to write, ever. Fiction book to write. And while I finished this book, a year ago, I got the strangest phone call about one of the characters in the book where the guy wanted to meet with me, and he read the book. And afterwards, is like, wait a minute, am I the villain in the book? This is a story about a character named Asher, who is half Armenian, half Assyrian, whose father was involved in the Iranian Revolution, linked to Savak, working with the Shah, that they escape, and he gets recruited to a secret society. Well, when you go to the secret society, it's been around for a couple thousand years. They've developed some of the craziest leaders of all time, and they test you. There's unique tests that they have at the society where they test to see your emotional mental toughness. One of the tests that they have is very rigorous. It's purely mental. Of course, there's a physical one, but one is mental and emotional. If you're Armenian, if you're Syrian, if you're Persian, this is a book you're going to be reading and saying, holy moly, this is the kind of stuff you talk about in here? Yes. If you're somebody that's fascinated by history, this is a book for you. Characters. There's a technology that this society, secret society, builds where you go into a vault. I won't spoil it for you. When you go down, they have a technology where you get to sit down and watch and have a 3-4 hour conversation with Tupac. You can set up a debate between Karl Marx and Ayn Rand. Karl Marx is in the book, who wrote Communist Manifesto. Ayn Rand, who wrote Atlas Shrugged, is in the book. Marilyn Monroe explains the concept of seduction and sex in the book. When you read the book, it's about
development of the next leaders in the world and how they do it and how they've been doing it for many years. And it's also about how to prevent the end of civilization and how this organization goes about doing it. So I've never written a parenting book before, but if I ever wrote a parenting book, this is the closest thing to it because it's all mindset, a lot of crazy stories. Again, 13 and a half years. Trust me, I told myself I will not publish this book until I sell my insurance company and I'm fully disconnected from it, where it's no longer my responsibility 100%. When you read this, if you're a creative person, if you like fiction books, if you enjoyed Atlas Shrugged, or if you enjoy Divergent, if you like books like that, I think you're gonna enjoy reading this book. It's the creative side. Business books is very easy. Here's how you do it. Here's how this how it works. This is very creative. If you haven't placed the order yet, now you can order it on Simon & Schuster, Amazon. I'm going to put the link up below somewhere here, maybe even in my profile. Go order the book and read it. I've never written a book where I can't wait to read your reviews to see what you think about this book. So I'm going on this wild journey and we have some plans with this book here. If you support the things that I work on, I would appreciate you going and reading the book, order the book on Amazon, and then post a review. If you enjoyed this video, you want to watch more videos like this, click here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click here.